Right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks very much for joining us here in the University of the West of Scotland. My name's Paul Martin. I'm the Deputy Principal at the University, and it's my job to do the kind of housekeeping introductions, and then I'll hand over to my colleague, Professor Musbafi. Now, first of all, this is a very special year for our university here. We are celebrating 10 years since we became the University of the West of Scotland. We were a merge of two institutions before that. We're celebrating 25 years since we got university status, and 120 years since the foundation stone of our institution was created here on this campus. So it's a really important year for us. And in essence, the beginning of this is started by this conference here today. So not only is it great to welcome you, you're also very special to us because you're starting our year of celebration. We expect to have around 250 delegates at the session. You'll appreciate from your programs that it's a mix of keynote speakers and workshops and seminar sessions. Can we encourage you, therefore, to log on? If you haven't done that, log on and use the conference app. My IT colleagues, those of us wearing the T-shirts, either purple, blue or white, are here to help you specifically. All UWS colleagues will help you out. But if you've got a particular question, please come and see someone wearing a T-shirt. Just to manage your expectations, I won't be of much use to you as the Deputy Principal, but my colleagues will be a lot of use to you. So I will delegate to somebody else. If you come speak to me, you'll find I'll pass you on to somebody else. We have managed all the fire alarm tests. They will happen before office hours. So if a fire alarm goes off, you should exit via the nearest fire exit. In this room, the exits are to my left here, behind the screen, and the doors at the back, or indeed the doors at the side. But colleagues, again, around the university will help you with that. Just please make sure that if you have to evacuate the building, you step away from the side of the building. So alarm, exit the building. In all of the rooms, you will find water, tea and coffee. So don't worry about it if you're trying to rush. A couple of colleagues earlier on was saying that they travelled quite a distance and were desperate for a cup of tea. So you will get that in each of the rooms. That's free of charge. If, however, you want to purchase tea, coffee and snacks, then again, there are catering facilities on this floor. At the back there are catering facilities down at the hub where the library is, and there's a coffee stand down in the main conference corridor. When you're using your app, please go online and book yourself into the sessions. I know that some people are not used to this, but in many larger conferences now, apps are used and you book yourself into your workshop or your seminar. That just allows us to manage numbers and to identify where there might be gaps. So please help us to do that and book yourself onto the sessions. If you're a speaker and you haven't yet downloaded your presentation, can you please make sure that you pass that to one of my IT colleagues, so speak to someone with one of the T-shirts on, and try and get that to us 2 hours in advance. That means that we have everything set up ready to go. There will be IT people around all of the seminar and workshop rooms to help you make sure you can access your presentation. So please don't worry about that, but it helps us if we can get access to your presentations at an early stage. There's a lot to remember, so again, just ask us. In the main conference corridor, which is what we refer to as the McLean corridor, all the computers on the desks there have been unlocked. So if you need access to a computer to do some work or to check your emails or to check your flight tickets for going home, then you can access that as well. If you find problems with your iPads and your laptops, you can access those. Down in the hub, where the library is and where catering will be for lunch tomorrow, we've also set up some of the computers with access to printers. So just speak to one of my colleagues, and if you need to print flight tickets or anything that you've booked for part of your social events, then please say to us and we'll organise that as well. We've got an extensive social programme as part of the conference as well. So we have a civic reception in Paisley Abbey. That's free of charge. That's a good Scottish opportunity for you. You don't have to pay for that. So we expect lots of people to come to that one. That's a civic reception means it's been hosted by the Lord Provost of the community that we're part of, the council area that we're part of. We then have tours of Paisley Abbey, tours of the Coates Memorial Church just across the road, and Small Cottage, which is the historical centre for the weaving industry, for which Paisley is internationally renowned. Again, book those in advance using the app. For those that are booked for the gala dinner, which is tomorrow night, I'm sorry, but these tickets have gone very, very quickly, and we really don't have any left unless you're absolutely desperate. And those are at the Kelvin Grove Gallery. Okay, so again, we'll talk about that tomorrow night. Walking tours have been organised again. You'll pick that up in your programme. We've got some local enterprise companies, so small single-person companies who are spin-outs and startups, and they have set up, or will set up for tomorrow, a makers market down in the hub. And again, please go and visit them. They have part of what they produce, their produce there for you to purchase, should you choose to do that. We also have Sandy Stoddart, who, I'll try and get his title right. He is the Queen's Sculptor in Residence. It's a great honour for us to have Sandy as part of the university, and his studios are here just down at the back of this building. And when you see the statue at the front of the university, that was Sandy's work. A larger model of that is also at Princeton University as well. So Sandy is hosting an open studio between 10 and 2 o'clock for those that might be interested in that. And then up the stairs outside the corridor here is Paisley Threadmill Museum touring exhibition, which is telling you about the weaving history of Paisley and links to the Paisley pattern. Restrooms are scattered around the university. Again, don't be embarrassed. We can point in the right direction. Just say to us, we're here to help you. Okay? I'm not going to ask if there are any immediate questions because I need to go on with the programme, but MD needing anything immediately? You're all right? Don't believe what they hear about the reserved British. We're Scottish. So if there's any questions at all, please just say to us. And for goodness sake, we know this is an academic conference, but you're here also to have fun. You're here to network. You're here to make new friends, to touch base with old friends. And please make sure you enjoy yourself. And ask us if there's anything that's worrying you, anything you're anxious about, anything you need us to sort, please just speak to us about that. We can't give you permanent visas or anything like that. But you might want to wait until after Brexit's sorted before you ask that question. So it's my pleasure then to introduce you to the full aspects of the conference, and I want to introduce you to one of my executive colleagues, Professor Ehsan Misbahi, who will do the general and formal welcome to the university. Ehsan.
Thank you, Paul. I have to make sure I'm not going to read exactly what Paul read for you here, so I'm going to have the time of changing these two. Colleagues, delegates, friends, this is extremely difficult to express my feelings, how proud we are that you're here. It is fascinating to have so many professional academics gathering in one occasion to discuss one of the most important issues of 21st century, that is about education, teaching and learning. I don't think, I mean, you can say the same thing year on year, but I don't think higher education has ever been to such a turbulent environment of change across the globe. Financial changes are happening all over the place. Political pressures are coming to every direction of higher education. Brexit is going to happen to United Kingdom, and industries are growing and changing direction of travel. Technology is impacting on education. Demographies are changing. The number of students are going up and down. We have Generation X, Generation Y, Generation Z, and it's never going to end. And all that expects a different approach to delivery of effective teaching and learning. Universities are in forefront of delivering that challenge, and it is extremely important to have this conference now. And what a delight to have this conference at UWS. I joined UWS about 1.5 years ago, and I found UWS probably, you can't find any university in UK more inclusive than UWS. You can't find any university more welcoming to diversity and welcoming students from very different backgrounds, very different ages, and from different parts of west of Scotland. And this is something which is extremely important to us, that we are leading delivery of programs which articulate different students, which alternative qualifications, and we allow them to develop their dream, develop their beliefs, and get out of here with achievement that they expected to get from a university. And this makes this doubly important that we are hosting this for the first time outside United States, and we are so proud that we were able to achieve this. I'm not going to talk anymore, and I would like to introduce Dr. Patrick Blessinger. As probably you guessed from my accent, I'm not from Scotland, but I was told that I have to call him a Will Kent. I just made it very clear to him before that this is not an insult. Means this is well known in a Scottish language. Am I right to say that, Paul? Brilliant. He's a Will Kent face for Hetl members, and I don't think he needs any introduction to that. But he's the chair of the Higher Education Teaching and Learning Association, and it would be my pleasure to invite him to come here and give a few words of wisdom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Misbahi. Well, I don't know if I have any words of wisdom, but maybe a few will drop out over the next few minutes. But I want to welcome everyone to the conference. Thank you for traveling really from all over the world to come here to Scotland and to the University of the West of Scotland. I want to thank UWS, Professor Martin, Linda Aiken, Matt Gilmore, and others, and especially Professor Craig Mahoney, the Vice Chancellor of the university, for putting it all together. Unless you've ever been sort of involved in organizing a conference, you're probably not aware of how much work and coordination and effort it takes to put all the different pieces together and have them come together in just the right way. And so having a host university who is really up to the challenge and to do that is very, very important. And they've done an absolutely wonderful, magnificent job. I couldn't be happier with everything that they put together. And so I know we're going to have a great 3 days here at the university and in Scotland. And I also want to remind you that please use the Twitter hashtag. So share your experiences, take photos, share your photos, etc. Please use the hashtag. Also, we would like to take, before Dr. Hoffman comes up here, to take a group photo and then share that also on social media. So if you're not okay with that, just let me know. Yeah, look away. All right, so and also I have a few journals, just very quickly, because we need to get Dr. Hoffman up here. But the Hetl Journal, Journal of Applied Research in Higher Education, we have 4 copies. We selected 4 names of the delegates at random. And so Isabel Kennedy, you don't have to come up here now, but get with me after the keynote. Glosia, hold on, I need to put on my glasses here. Moreira from Brazil, Michael Gilbert from the USA, and Morella Gudica from Canada. Okay. All right, so Dr. Hoffman, her title of her keynote is The Pursuit of Inclusive Excellence Inside and Outside the Classroom. Dr. Hoffman is an assistant professor of clinical education at University of Southern California's Rossier School of Education. Her expertise includes assessment in higher education, student affairs administration, development of college student leaders, access and equity, and the use of technology inside and outside the classroom for advancing student learning and engagement. Dr. Hoffman has experience as a faculty member teaching face-to-face, blended online courses on assessment, education, communication, diversity, organizational leadership to undergraduate and graduate students. She maintains leadership roles in various professional associations, including the National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, Faculty Council, and she's also involved in the Higher Education Teaching Learning Association. So please give a big hand to Dr. Hoffman.
Oh, selfie.
Before you do that, can I ask you just to wave to the world? Keep waving. Patrick ran in front of the camera there. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, how's everybody doing? Is everybody mostly awake? Because I understand when you travel through time zones, it's all a little bit iffy, which is actually okay for me right now. No. Welcome, everybody. I want to begin. That picture's a little bit gray on the screen there, but actually you've seen it because it's a picture of this building. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start today by thanking everyone. I know this has already been done, but I really want to thank everyone for the hard work that was put into making this conference great. I'm someone that is a former student affairs and residence life specifically professional, so I really understand what goes on behind the scenes and IT. So I really do thank you, and I'd like everybody to give them a round of applause because now they're in action. So speaking about accents, mine might be a bit funny to you because I'm a bit of a blend. This conference rounds out for me a kind of magical and meaningful 3 weeks I've had traveling around England with my 2 young children and my husband. One of them was dancing on the stage this morning while we were rehearsing. I was able to introduce them to my home country, and which is England, and my birthplace, which is Southport, which is where we were here, where we were before we came here. So it's really a pleasure to be here with you, and an honor to be asked to stand in as a keynote for this important event. So thank you. Before we get started, I wanted to share some logistics and some technology-related points. As was mentioned in my intro, I specialize in using technology, so I wanted to make sure that you knew that for the duration of my discussion with you, I'm going to invite you to engage with me on a private back channel called Today's Meet. And if you don't know what that is, or even if you don't know what a back channel is, it's just a chance for you to maintain real-time conversation on your devices alongside my speech. And don't worry, I won't think you're rude if you're looking down at your device. In fact, I appreciate the engagement. So let me show you what today's meet will look like. If you click on well, you can't click on a link, but you'll see that this is what it looks like when you open it. It works fairly well on all web-enabled devices, and you don't need to log in to participate, but you do need to select a name. If you want to select a fake name, a nickname, obviously something appropriate, everyone in the room, you can do so there, and I'll be asking you to engage in that throughout the session. You'll also find a paper on your seats when you sat down that gives you the URL for my keynote presentation materials, including the actual Google Slides presentation and a link to the digital activities that I'll be using, including a link to today's meet. And I would like to invite you to get started participating in today's meet by introducing yourself, maybe sharing your name, your role, and your country of origin or residence, because that could be a bit confusing if you were me, because I live in California. So what I want to mention is, while I understand that most keynote speeches usually involve someone speaking to you the entire time, I have created this speech as one that will actually engage you as an audience, and you'll be doing some interacting and discussion with each other. I do this because I believe that what you do in our time together is more important than what I do. Also, putting a plug in for the hashtag for the conference, I do invite you to participate in the back channel on Twitter or your favorite social media platform using the hashtag Uws Hetl, H-E-T-L, or Hetl, I guess, depending on how you want to pronounce it, 2017. Okay, so I'd like to now get started talking about what we are here for, which is discussing the very important issue of creating inclusion and diversity in higher education. Heather Small of the M People, yes, I do mean the M People, and I'll explain why later on, and hopefully it'll all make sense and you won't just think I'm crazy. She wrote, "Still so many answers I don't know. Realize that to question is how we grow. So step out of the ordinary." As we know, today, students come from diverse backgrounds, have widely divergent levels of preparation. Some may be returning to college after working for several years or serving in the military, and are often employed while in college to support themselves and their families. These students are adult students, international immigrant students, students from less advantaged families, students who are working full-time and attending part-time. These groups of students are often referred to as non-traditional students, but the reality is, together, they are the new majority in higher education. So the question then becomes, or questions then become, how well are we serving this new majority, and how can we best serve them for years to come? As with Heather Small's quote, I believe that in order to serve our students best, and with excellence, we must step out of the ordinary, and we must think differently. And to get your mind open to the idea of thinking differently, I'd like to start with this video.
This is the end of publishing, and books are dead and boring. No longer can it be said that we like to read. My friends and I, we don't like the way books feel in our hands. It's not true that I don't follow trends. I know what I want when I see it, and packaging is more important than content. I have to tell you, my attention span is too small for big ideas. And it's just not true that I read a lot and I like learning. I don't care. And you should never think I've got to be concerned with environment and sustainability. What I really hope you get is you've got to open your eyes to my values. What's important to me is what Lady Gaga is wearing. And I don't really care all that much what Gandhi did last century. I think it's unbelievable that you're actually listening to us. What's important for you is you'll find customers for your products. You think your job's done if we like your brand. We'll do it for you on Facebook, on our mobiles, me and my friends. Your market is dying. Don't think it's all going to survive. It is the end of the publishing industry as we know it. Unless you reverse how you see me. It is going to survive. Don't think that it's all dying. Your market is me and my friends. On our mobiles, on Facebook, we'll do it for you. If we like your brand, your job's done. You'll think of products for your customers. You'll find what's important for you is that you're actually listening to us. I think it's unbelievable what Gandhi did last century. And I don't really care all that much what Lady Gaga is wearing. What's important to me is you've got to open your eyes to my values. What I really hope you get is I've got to be concerned with environment and sustainability. And you should never think I don't care. I read a lot and I like learning. And it's just not true that my attention span is too small for big ideas. I have to tell you, content is more important than packaging. I know what I want when I see it, and I don't follow trends. It's not true that we don't like the way books feel in our hands. My friends and I, we like to read. No longer can it be said that books are dead and boring, and this is the end of publishing.
So just as we often need to think differently about students, I believe that we need to think differently about our practices when it comes to equity, inclusion, and diversity. We need to move away from thinking we are achieving inclusion via time-bound interventions like a diversity workshop, a club for marginalized students, or a small policy change that creates gender-neutral toilets or bathrooms, as we say in the US. We need to move toward embedding inclusive excellence. Oops, clicker stopped working. There we go. We need to move toward embedding inclusive excellence within the very core of the educational enterprise and treating it as an ongoing commitment. We need to reframe our thinking toward the broad concept of inclusive excellence. During our time together today, I'll share a definition of inclusive excellence, provide strategies for making excellence inclusive inside the classroom and in the co-curriculum outside the classroom. Moreover, I'll challenge you to reflect on your own practices and those of your institution, and with any hope, you'll leave this session motivated to navigate this conference with an action-oriented mindset. As we think about defining the concept of inclusive excellence, it's useful to look at how excellence and inclusivity is seen in college and university mission statements, since they are intended to serve as the guiding force behind university initiatives and strategic plans. I created this word cloud by cutting and pasting several college mission statements in an online tool. I ended up with this, in which those words that are repeated the most often are the largest. And you can see a handful of words here, including diversity and excellence. And while both of those words are present in the statements, I'm not so sure that these two words and concepts are explicitly linked together. In fact, I know they're not, and I think they should be. I believe that we no longer must say we pursue excellence separately from inclusion, because the two terms are really interdependent. We cannot claim to be excellent if we are not being inclusive. In 2005, the Association of American Colleges and Universities called for institutions of higher education to move away from a fragmented focus on diversity and to begin thinking about how to promote inclusive excellence in post-secondary institutions, and the association made inclusive excellence one of its goals. According to the AACNU, making inclusive excellence is thus an active process, which colleges and universities achieve excellence in learning, teaching, student development, institutional functioning, and engagement in local and global communities. And what this means is that the responsibility for making excellence inclusive is everybody's. Administrators, faculty, staff, students, and even alumni, as opposed to one unit or one department shouldering the responsibility for diversity. And by diversity, I do use a broad definition to include disability, gender, identity and expression, sexual orientation, age, race, religion, ethnicity, nationality, and other important social dimensions that are part of our campus communities. Inclusive excellence should also be embedded throughout the institution, but in areas including, but not limited to, demographics, curriculum, policies, pedagogy, financial resources, leadership, hiring, student learning, marketing, technology, teaching, student advising, communications, administration, recruitment and promotion of faculty and staff, assessment, institutional advancement, tenure and promotion, and evaluation. In order to make excellence inclusive, we must uncover inequities in student success, identify effective educational practices, and construct practices for sustained institutional change. According to the University of Denver's inclusive excellence definition, inclusive excellence is the recognition that a community or institution's success is dependent on how well it values, engages, and includes the rich diversity of students, staff, faculty, administrators, and alumni constituents. As opposed to us focusing our resources toward facilitating activities aimed at the student, where we expect them to adapt to our environment, we need to focus our energy and resources toward improving our students' environment. This needs to become a habit and a core function of all aspects of what we do, because making excellence inclusive is not just one person's job or fulfilled by adding a single statement to a core syllabus. It needs to be a campus, rather a community-wide effort. So how do we go about making excellence inclusive? We must deeply reflect on ourselves, our co-curriculum, and our curriculum, and I will discuss each of these areas in the following slides. First and foremost, I think we need to educate ourselves or others before we can seek to affect change. We must reflect upon ourselves because change is needed on both individual and institutional levels to bring about inclusive policy and practice. We must take the time to consider the intersection of our various identities and understand what systemic privileges some of us have benefited from. We should identify and uncover our explicit and implicit biases that could affect how we work with each other, and most importantly, how we work to support our students. There are resources available to assist with this. I recommend taking one of the implicit association tests offered by Harvard University's Project Implicit. And I'll say that through my own reflection, I acknowledge that as a white person, I have experienced various privileges my peers of color have not benefited from. And while various aspects of my identity, such as my weight, gender, and first-generation status, have left me feeling at times like another, I will never know what it is like to truly be in somebody else's shoes. This self-reflection process is and might be uncomfortable, but we need to get uncomfortable to make change. Our students and peers from marginalized communities have been uncomfortable for a long time, and in fact, that's an understatement, as many have suffered much more than discomfort. And it is time that we step up and take risks for the benefit of our communities. With all aspects of my identity, most notably those that come with privilege, I commit to making the most of this space that I am taking by using it to affect change in our educational systems for the pursuit of inclusive excellence, and I encourage you to do the same. After engaging in self-reflection, we need then to look at our practices outside and inside of the classroom. Beginning looking at the co-curriculum, we need to ask ourselves questions to truly assess the job that we are doing at making excellence inclusive. On the following slides, I'll read a series of questions that ask you to reflect upon your own practice. I encourage you to note those points that resonate most with you, perhaps because they amplify something that you do well, or maybe they help you identify an area of growth. You will have a chance to briefly chat with a neighbor, or a couple of neighbors, about the reflections on making excellence inclusive in the co-curriculum. Many of these questions and more can be found in the great resource provided by the University of Denver in their Inclusive Excellence Toolkit, and I have provided a link to that on the Keynote resource page that you have access to. So the first question is, do your units have inclusive excellence statements, and are they shared publicly? Do your units have a history of excluding members of diverse identities, backgrounds, and/or experiences? Is the location of office suites or space easy to access? Are people from various backgrounds and identities represented in the decor in individual offices and common spaces? Oops, there they are. Have you considered what impact each policy and practice may have on diverse identities, backgrounds, and experiences, and are policies and practices carried out consistently to all? Are traditions and celebrations inclusive? For instance, looking at the global calendar, dietary preferences, learning ability, cost, etc. And do you recognize individuals or departments for their practices and contributions to inclusive excellence? Do you have a structure and procedure for expressing climate concerns, for instance, bias response protocol? Has leadership participated in inclusive excellence training, and do they support individual excellence initiatives with financial resources, something that might be discussed tomorrow? Are individuals from diverse identities, backgrounds, and experiences represented in the unit's leadership? Do supervisors take into consideration diverse identities, backgrounds, and experiences in the workplace? For instance, religious holidays, accommodations, children or no children, and with regard to professionalism expectations, like gender implications and dress. And is inclusiveness embedded into job descriptions, employee orientation or onboarding, and the evaluation process? Are registration materials for events accessible to assistive technology devices? And is the location accessible to all attendees? Do you know how students perceive the campus climate? Is inclusive excellence part of the assessment process? And when planning new projects, is a widely represented range of identities, backgrounds, and experiences included not only in the process, but also the decisions from the beginning? At this moment, what I'd like to have you do is take about 5 minutes to pick someone next to you. It's always nice to pick someone you don't know, but you don't have to. And speak with them about 1 or 2 reflections you had about your institution's inclusive excellence policies or practices, specifically in the co-curriculum, because we'll speak about the curriculum in a moment. And what I'd like you to do then is to find 1 reflection that you want to share on today's meet. So I'll give you about 5 minutes to have a discussion and then about 2 minutes to post it on today's meet. And only one of you has to post it. So if you haven't been with the tech, only one of you has to. Okay, one more minute. One more minute, everyone. They've turned it on. Okay, if I can ask everybody to round out your conversations and maybe have one person write down or take note of what you've been discussing. All right, thank you everyone. I really appreciate you taking the time to discuss with each other. And I do continue to ask you to note your discussions and maybe one key point that you had with each other that you were discussing, and note that on today's meet. And feel free to continue engaging with each other on that platform. Before I consider and start talking about specifically classroom-based ways to make excellence inclusive, I did want to make sure and highlight the importance of looking at high-impact practices on college campuses, because they do cut across the curriculum and co-curriculum. And we need to identify which are best suited for your students, your institution's learning outcomes, and we need to determine if we are actually working proactively to ensure equitable student participation in HIPs, as they are often called. And some examples of HIPs are first-year seminars and experiences, learning communities, collaborative assignments and projects, and capstone courses and projects. All right. Equally important, obviously, to considering HIPs and examining the co-curriculum, we need to look inside our classrooms and consider how we make excellence inclusive in both the content of our curriculum and the process of learning. On the following slides, much like I just did previously, I'll read a series of questions that ask you to reflect on the content of your curriculum and your teaching and learning process. Like with earlier, I encourage you to take notes and note those points that resonate most with you. And that might be because it's something you do well, or your institution does well, or something you see as an area of growth. And I'll also give you a few minutes to chat with a neighbor about those. And again, there are useful resources on the Keynote resource page that I have provided for you that have several different ways to consider making excellence inclusive in the classroom. And so I'm going to go ahead and begin and have you think about specifically the content that is included in the curriculum. So the first question is, do you choose materials and readings where students' identities are honored and affirmed and represented in the curriculum? Do you consider the roles of certain identities and how they are portrayed in the curriculum or media used inside the classroom? Do you consider the diversity of authors, for instance, males and females, selected in the curriculum that you choose? Do you address or at least acknowledge current events that may be impacting your students? Do you diversify your guest speakers? And have you considered the familiarity your students will have with some of the video clips that you show in class? And I don't just mean that you realize, oh, suddenly you're getting older and they don't know the old stuff. I also mean, for instance, that international students might not be familiar with the sitcom Friends in the United States. Okay, so now let's look specifically at the teaching and learning process. Do you have an inclusivity statement in your syllabus? Do you create norms at the beginning of class to establish safe and brave spaces? Do you use multiple methods to deliver course content? And do you design the learning experience using universal design principles? Do you use multiple ways for students to demonstrate what they know? Do you utilize principles of active learning to engage students in the learning process, remembering that what students do during the learning process is more important than what you do? Do you seek feedback in your classes to assess the classroom climate? Do you recognize that students learn in different ways? And are you aware of your own biases, and do you understand your own assumptions, particularly with regard to student participation and performance? And what I mean by that is that, do you assume that maybe students will ask for help if they need it? Do you think that maybe men know more about some topic than women? Do you think that maybe people of color aren't as good of writers, which again goes back to the implicit bias tests that we can take? Do you think that old people maybe learn slower? And do you check attendance by memory? Because if you do that, you perhaps don't realize that those who have visible differences, like potentially students who are in a wheelchair, are more noticeable if they're absent. And do you use a culturally responsive teaching approach by seeking to help students use their cultural knowledge, prior experiences, frame of reference to make content more relevant and effective? Are you authentic and honest? Perhaps you even share your own challenges and limitations. And this one I just mentioned. Are you aware of your own biases, and do you understand your assumptions, particularly with regard to student participation and performance? Okay. So I'd now like to invite you again to take a few minutes to speak with the peer that you spoke to, or you can choose a new one, about one or two reflections you had about your or your colleagues or your institution's inclusive excellence practices in the classroom. And I'll ask you to do the same and post on today's Meet in the last couple of minutes. So I'll give you about 8 minutes to have a chat with each other, okay? Thank you.
It's cancelling the keynote, Finlay.
Okay. Okay, I'll ask you to wrap up your conversation now. That's good. That's good. One more minute, everyone. Okay, I ask you now to wrap up your conversations, please. Sorry. All right, everyone, thank you for being so engaged. The good news is you have a bit of a break after this, so the conversation can keep going, right? But we do want to move along so we can move to the sessions that we have after this. But thank you so much for your willingness to reflect and discuss your practices. And as you can see, it seems that there is so much to do to achieve this idea of inclusive excellence. But the reality is that inclusive excellence is a process, not a destination. There are many resources available to us, some of which I've included on the Keynote resource page. But the truth is, we can begin to work on this now, and many of you have been working on this for the past several years, but we can begin at this conference too by attending sessions that fill in gaps of our knowledge, and we can make a direct impact on our work when we go back to our campuses. As you looked through the program, the workshops and the presentations, I'm sure you noticed that there are opportunities for you to increase your understanding of the various topics I've mentioned that will help you to make excellence inclusive. And I encourage you to remember that the content of these presentations must be joined together to create a broad perspective of inclusive excellence embedded across the university. There is so much to discover through these next few days. And honestly, I can't think of a more important time for us to bring together our unique national perspectives and strengths to address some shared challenges and affect change. Don't be intimidated by the enormity of the work before us or the paradigm shift that is needed to make excellence inclusive as we move toward an environment where the two words are viewed as inseparable. Okay, with this in mind, it seems appropriate now to explain the musical connection and the reference I made to the song lyric by Heather M. of the M People. I didn't start with a quote or a music lyric just because I was a music major in college, although I was, and I went to Arizona State. I saw some people from Arizona State. It's my understanding, at least from Wikipedia, which, I mean, as we all know, is a very reliable resource, that the term keynote comes from music. Specifically from the practice of a cappella singing, where a note is sung before the group sings, which determines the key in which the song is going to be performed. Thus, a keynote speech should set the tone for the conference. So I'd like to set the tone by encouraging you to find ways during the following days to do what Heather Small recommends. Step out of the ordinary and make yourself proud. And I welcome you, and you have to do it, because you're in Scotland, and this is what people do. They have a good time. So I